All right, it's a nice, beautiful, snowy morning. We're in the middle of December right now, and rained all day yesterday, and we got a little bit of a dusting in the morning, unfortunately. I'm on a job here where this customer just had his house built this year and some minor site work done, but he'd like to do some more cleanup right now and potentially get a lot more fill brought in for his backyard, as well as redoing some rock walls and finishing out with loam and seed in the spring. So this whole area up here was lifted about 8 or 10 feet where my truck is sitting, off over that bank behind it to bring up this front yard portion, and something similar in the back that'll have to be done. But there are some big stumps left to pull, so my buddy Adam with Colonial Stoneworks, who tore down the house, and we did a couple other projects together, recruited him with his 220 to come over here to pull those stumps and do some work where I can't quite reach with my machines. So he has a nice little Engcon setup on this guy that he just got, along with a CMP Grapple as well. So this thing is pretty awesome. I worked with him on a wall a couple weekends ago, and just like the small machine, it can pick up really big rocks and spin them all around into whatever angle you want. And then the other goal will be to go around the edges of the perimeter of the property and pick out all the small saplings and items out of the hillside and just clean up the woods line. So unfortunately, I was originally going to put in this wall here, but it turned out that the mason that was doing the front entryway could also do this wall for a discounted price. So we ended up going with them to put this wall in ASAP. I'm not so bummed about not being able to put in the wall, but more so my access up this hill, because one of the first projects here is to restack the whole farmer's wall behind this and clean up all the small stuff out of it. So before the wall was here, I did have access perpendicular to the hill if I went up with the excavator. Now I'm gonna have to kind of sneak around the top with the 26 and see what I can get to. So luckily down here and up in the front, I do have a bit of access to get up and around if I weave through the trees up here, just to kind of get myself up to the wall and some of those stumps at the top. And then continuing around the side here, clean up, redo this section here, pull out all the small material saplings. And the goal on this side will be to clean up this hill and then backfill this entire little valley and rebuild the rock wall on top of that valley, continuing up to hopefully connect back in to where I'll be fixing the one on top of the hill, providing we have enough rocks and material for that. Here are a few of the larger stumps. Those things are probably 3.5 to 4 foot diameter at the base, and there's a smaller stump right beside it too. And then, as you can see, looking into the backyard here, it's a nice steep fall off. So his idea would be to lift probably halfway between the bottom where the wellhead is to about that height, which is about a 3 to 4 foot lift, just to level out the back and bring it up a bit. So it's going to be a lot of material. We'll see how it looks after we clean it up. But the goal for this first phase of the project will be basically grubbing and pulling out any of the excess organic material, stumps, cleaning up the rock wall, and basically prepping out the area here to accept fill. Luckily it is a straight shot, but it is pretty steep. As you can see, the rest of the area around here has a bunch of beautiful oaks, and this whole area was largely oaks. And all the stumps were ground in this lower portion, so there's a bunch of stump material still there. So since we have the 225 here, it probably makes sense to go through and just grub and scrape that out, so that if we do a smaller lift, all that material will not be in our way. And then coming back around the right side of the house, there is another large 3 to 4 foot stump down at the bottom there, kind of covered in snow. So, and a bunch of extra fill material that was left from the site work. Oh yeah, and I will likely be pulling out all of that small debris down there in between all those trees. Alright, so that stump was in there really good. We had the whole 220 pulling on it, and it was not budging. It had a couple of really big roots that went out under this wall, and it was attached to another rock, I believe, below it. Anyways, cut it off to about ground level. That's the best we can do. It's the last stump up here. Everything else this way is all kind of just, I'm going to go through and hand cut a lot of the smaller stuff, and we'll get it out of there. And there's a bit change of plans. Basically, this property wall was built by one of the neighbor's parents, and they don't want it modified, at least for the current time being. So everything on this wall is going to stay the same until we get to the back. So I'm just going to work on cleaning this area up and getting all this stuff out. And while I'm doing that, I'll let you guys watch Adam do some ripping.
really close. I think you just broke it. said they're unpredictable.
They are. They really are.
Alright, start of the next morning. I have the whole top area up there cleaned out as best as I can without touching the existing wall. Adam's gone around and picked what he can off the edge this side along with some stumps, and he started going out back and clearing some more stuff. So what I'm going to do this morning is get the 26 down in the lower area to pull out a lot of the deadfall, and see how much of that we can get put back up here so that we can grab it with the big machine from the top side. Alright, so I'm going to see what I can do to try to weasel out these larger logs. So I believe Adam's got trucks running today to bring in fill for this back corner to raise that, since the homeowner would like to extend the driveway out to the right of Adam's machine, as well as lift the area for some plantings, since his neighbor's yard is a ton of fill just falling right down basically into his properties. Well, he's working on that today. Another additional scope item was basically to go through back in this woods area and clean out as much of the deadfall as we can get to up along this wall, kind of out to where you can see a little bit of pond area over there, and right up to the other side of the property line where we had already cleared. So I'm going to go through with the 26 and the grapple on it and do what I did in the other area and just basically pluck stuff out and toss it back up towards the area where we can grab it with the skid steer or the 220. All right, next morning, so while Adam is loading out material in the back, I'm going to keep moving forward up here and cleaning up by the water line and getting the material all the way back and bunched up for him to grab over here when we're regrading this whole slope. Okay, that opens that area right up and brings all the material up so that we can grab it from this side once we start clearing it. I think I'll say this every time I use this grapple, but man, does it make doing projects like this so much easier, and almost anything where you need some sort of dexterity and manipulation. And this thing really excels with those serrated edge teeth, because I can grab all these small objects and then on top of that be able to weave them in and out of the trees and stack them all up in the same orientation. It's huge, especially for loading trailers now, because we can just grab that entire pile and stuff it in the trailer or the dump truck without having to do any more manipulation to it. And I mean, for this whole project, having two machines with rotating grapples has been an absolute time saver and allowed us to do so many things that we otherwise couldn't have. So these grapples are definitely proving to be quite the value for their price. All right, we got a couple piles of tailings dropped off in the front here, and I think the goal with these will be to just start adding them to this side. I believe his original hope was to fill all the way out to the bottom of those trees, but I don't know if that's going to be the reality of what we do, just because it's a lot of fill, a lot of cost for really not much gain. So there's a whole row of fill along the side of the house that we're going to fan out around this corner. But before we do that, we'll put in all the rougher tailings underneath that and see where we get. All right, so we've been filling this back corner here, and it's sloping out nicely, but we have to get the rock wall out of the way so that I can reuse those rocks on the grade once this is completely filled. All right, so we're getting in all sorts of trouble here. The neighbor really does not want this wall touched at all, so basically we're backing off how much we're backfilling up to it, and I'm just going to lay everything right back in and leave everything along this wall untouched to avoid any problems. So try and get this thing back together as quick as I can. All right, so now that we finished up most of the work in the back and on the side for what we can do now, we're gonna move on to starting to clear out and shape up the side yard here. I've already prepped some of the bottom, but I'm gonna get back down there with the Mini. But first what I'm gonna do is take some of this overburden right here and clean it up into the valley over here so that we can get the 225 into this area. Okay, so Adam and I have pretty much finished up here for the clearing and rough grading of the entire site. I know I said this a few times already, but I did a pretty bad job at recording this one because Adam was working here while I was working my software job, and I could really only record the days I was here, and even then I was running around trying to get everything in order. So I'll take you through a little bit of the layout right now. We were able to clear out this front right corner, take out that retaining wall, that old foundation wall that was there, terrace this down and bring it down in manageable slopes to the waterfront for the client. Originally his plan was to grass this whole area and put in different plantings. I believe he'll probably consult with his landscape architect to figure out what he wants to do with this extra space now. But you can see in there the old wellhead. There used to be a house, I believe, in this area that burned down on the old lot. Of course, the grade is always hard to make out on camera, but it's a pretty good slope back here. Definitely mowable once it's final graded. Unfortunately, not much we can do about this pocket or slope here because it will just fill out into the trees, and it really wouldn't gain much other than another slope. We're able to prune out some of the overgrown smaller saplings in this area and leave the larger ones to make it look a bit better and manage the unkempt forest, along with pulling out all of the larger fallen debris, everything pretty much 3 inches and above. Otherwise it gets super tedious with those machines. That rock we snuck out of the bottom we placed up here on the approach from the driveway, so you get a pretty cool angle hook off the back. A nice flat face from the driveway, and then a bit of a textured side on the house face. Over here we added a whole bunch of fill to bring this slope out again to make it manageable for wild grasses, I believe was the original plan, and it basically cleans up this side and gives a little bit more flat space going around the edge. And along the left side of the driveway, I was able to clean out all of the small saplings and stumps, aside from one big one up there. So that cleans up his hillside. Unfortunately, due to a discrepancy with the neighbor, we were unable to fix this wall completely and continue it all the way through to make a nice clean connection, which sort of stems into the issue up here of why this stump is still here. So I was able to pretty much hand rake out any of the smaller stuff and clean it up with the machine where I could all the way through. And then, of course, this stump is, we tried pulling this with a 225. I tried digging it out, and it's just buried around rocks because it grew up where the wall was. So probably the only way to get this one out is go at it with a chainsaw, maybe a planer auger. But I think a stump grinder would be very upset as soon as it got down to the bottom and started hitting all those rocks. And like I mentioned before, unfortunately we can't fix this pile of rocks and or take the rubble out of it. It kind of just has to stay that way until the neighbors come to an agreement. And coming down off the back of the driveway here, we added a whole bunch of fill to lift the left side, which was originally a very large valley down here. His plans are to extend the back corner of the driveway into this area, so once spring comes around and hopefully the conflict of the wall is sorted, this area can be leveled up and raised a bit more with some driveway base for that extension. I was able to rebuild this section of wall because it was non-existent before, and we were raising the fill so it would have covered it. Just wish I could have done that through the whole thing. Down here we found some decent flat rocks on that front right side, so we saved those for possible future projects of his, and or if he can continue fixing the wall, we could use these somewhere in there. If not, they're kind of just a little outcropping of rock wall on the back side of his property. And then going back to the creek there, we cleaned out all the deadfall, took down all of the dead trees, so it's nice and clean now. So a lot less junk and debris all strewn about the woods there. Then for the backyard, we went through with the 225, ripped out all of the major stumps that were still sticking out, raked up all of the larger debris and put it in that back pocket right about there to level off the backyard up against this property line. And then coming around to the back side again, I spread the rest of the fill / loam out in this back corner. All this material had been holding water for a couple months now, so it was very wet, and it's not perfect by any means, but it does get the shape of the land roughed in and helps alleviate a lot of the sloping and bottoming out of the curve coming out to the backyard. So that's pretty much all the work that we did here. So I think for the entire thing that we did here, Adam was here for about 14 or 15 days, and I was here for about 9 days. And we definitely got it done pretty efficiently. Of course, a couple hiccups here and there, but I mean, the ability of both the 225 and the 26 having rotating grapples on them was absolutely crucial for doing all of the cleanup work, and was extremely crucial for doing a lot of the slope work and the grading. As you probably saw in this back portion of the video, the Adam with the 225 has a rock bucket, and he was pretty much able to scrape and pull all of the material, sort it out, kind of sprinkle it about, and then take the junk material and flip it around for me to push into the hole. And he did that pretty much the entire way around the house, which allowed for a really nice layering rough finish of the area, so you don't have all these big rocks and bumps on the top surface where you're going to be doing your final grading. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the final product here. Of course, I'll probably be back to do some of the final grading and loaming in the spring once they figure out what they want, and then possibly for some other projects he was talking about, but he's currently away right now, so he won't be back on this property for quite a few months, and we'll figure that out then.